My financial situation, the family situation, leaving the job and doing an MBA was not an option for me. The industry has seen a lot of very fast growth in the past few years, especially after COVID. A lot of the growth that you are seeing is that coming from the growth of the company and or the growth of the industry. I just feel like I was fortunate to be at GLG at that time, and GLG, like, it's a great company, it's very people focused company. A lot of firms in India are just looking beyond the Ivy League schools to hire talent. My approach has always been to sort of make sure that I am constantly aligned on what my long-term vision is.
Hello everyone, welcome to the podcast with Geeks for Geeks. Here we will be discussing about the career transitions and insights from many reputed guests. And today with us is Pramil. So he is currently director at Bain Company, and he is having more than 20 years of experience under his belt. And he will be sharing with us some really nice insights and interesting experiences that he has gone through in the past years. So Pramil, we will start with a small introduction from your end. And let's start with your college days and how did you decided to get into this professional journey, and what were the initial thoughts that were occurring in your mind at that time?
So I am from Gwalior, and I completed my graduation from Gwalior. Gwalior is not a very developed city. So most of the employment is still continues to be more around tourism and own businesses that people have. I wanted to explore and also sort of develop the experience of working in more professional organizations. So as I completed my graduation, the obvious step for me was to come to Delhi because it's closer. The college days were not sort of I don't have a lot of very specific memories of my college days because the education in the college was probably not similar to what we have in DU and some of these other colleges. So it was more focused on classes and exams and assessments, but not a lot of friends or travels and those kind of things. So it was sort of still limited. Plus, I was still at home, so I used to sort of stay at my home with my parents, not in a hostel. Okay. So it was quite limited in that sense.
Okay, so this was, I think, around 2000s, the start of 2000s.
Yes.
Okay, great. Then you joined Wipro, Wipro BPO.
Yeah.
So you joined Wipro BPO, then you switched into Gerson Lehrman.
Yeah.
So joining a BPO and then shifting towards a MNC, totally shifting your a professional journey.
Yeah.
So how you got into Wipro BPO, and
Yeah.
what was basically your learnings that you took from there, and how did you decided to think that now it's a step for me to look out for the other opportunities?
Yeah. So Wipro BPO, as the name suggests, was a BPO. At the time that I graduated, that industry, BPO industry, was actually quite booming in India. It had just started a few years ago, and there were a lot of new players which were setting up. We had started while the IT industry had already existed, but we had started sort of the outsourcing of a lot of back office applications from developed countries like US and Europe to India, which was leading to a lot of increase in demand of these services in India. So as I sort of came to Delhi and I was exploring options, Wipro was already a good brand, and I gave a walk-in interview. Fortunately, I got the offer. For me, at that time, it was more about trying and testing and seeing if it works out or not. But because it was a good brand, they had good people practices. The business was growing, so I continued there for about 5 years. I started as at a very lower level of sort of for a international laptop and PC manufacturer. So it was an account for Dell computers that we had. So my role was primarily to sort of support the technical troubleshooting for clients who used to call into Dell. and I had no exposure to computers before I got into that role. I did not have one at my home. I did not have one in college. So it was a good learning. I mean, getting exposure to work on laptops, computers, and then also sort of understanding the technical part of it. But right from the beginning, I think my interest was more around leading people and managing people. So I continued my focus to gain experience and sort of move quickly to those leadership roles. So as I started, I think within a year I moved out of calling and I became what we used to call as a level 2 support person, where I was not doing calls but I was supporting a team with their technical queries. And then in another 6 months, 6 to 8 months, I got promoted to team leader. That's when I was given an independent team to manage. And then I continued from there in sort of growing the team and growing in Wipro. I worked there for 5 years. I think it was a great experience for multiple reasons. Number one, I think the BPO culture is very different from, let's say, like a Bain culture that I work in today.
So, I was also into Genpact in around 2019. So I worked in Genpact for the, Samsung's product.
Right.
So I kind of can relate to that.
That's great.
It's, workings in a normal corporate and a BPO is very different. You will develop a lot of skill sets that you can utilize.
So I think one of the key skill sets that I developed during my time at Wipro BPO was just the comfort to interact with sort of global people. Before that, I had no exposure to sort of interacting with someone in US or even meeting someone and talking to them. But continuously sort of working in that environment, talking to a lot of people from US who were calling, that gave me a lot of exposure to sort of interacting with global stakeholders, which I really feel helped me a lot when I made my first switch from Wipro BPO to Gersel and Men Group. And I still remember, like, after my first year of review, performance review at Gersel and Men Group, my supervisor at that time, she actually told me that she was surprised that I could confidently communicate with the global stakeholders at Gersel and Men Group also on different projects, which she felt like was very good for and gave her a lot of comfort. And when I reflected back on it, I realized, like, for the at least most part of those 5 years, I mean, I was talking to a lot of US-based stakeholders. So in a way, that just became subconsciously comfortable for me.
Okay, so Pramil, moving forward, while at the Wipro, you also did your executive non-residential MBA from IIM.
Yeah.
So what made you, to go for this decision, and how did you, apply for this? Because it's a very different from a regular MBA. So how come you made that?
So 2-3 things. I think one, professional reasons. As while I was at Wipro BPO, I had the desire to learn more about business. I wanted to improve how I run operations, how I manage my teams, how I think strategically as a leader, to sort of improve the outcomes of the work I was doing. And as I was thinking about it, I felt an MBA would be helpful for me, but because of my financial situation, the family situation, leaving the job and doing an MBA was not an option for me. So fortunately, I think it was around that time, 2006 and 2007, when the IIM, I think it was the IIM Calcutta institute, which was the first institute to launch their non-residential sort of distance learning, as you can call it, those programs. And as I got to know about it, I applied for it. I don't know if there was sort of a very stringent criteria they had, but they did ask a few questions on why I wanted to do the MBA, what was I currently doing, how will I apply my learnings from the MBA for that program. So I applied for it. From my perspective, even at that time, I think I found it expensive, but I somehow sort of, because I wanted to do it anyways, I saved some money, and then I sort of paid my fees. So it was a 1-year program, and the good thing was that they used to have like 3 or 4 classes in a week, which were taken actually by the same professors who were teaching, probably teaching the same sort of full-time MBAs as well. So in a way, I mean, I felt like I was getting a great learning from while I was working. And I was able to sort of convince my supervisors at Wipro to just allow me time to attend the classes in the evening, because at BPO, my work used to start at evening. It was not like a regular 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. kind of a role. So that helped. And it was a 1-year program. They also had a 1 week sort of stay at IIM Calcutta, just to sort of experience the culture and the classes and those kind of things. So, and it really helped me a lot just to sort of build foundational knowledge about the different sort of topics around finance, marketing, HR, operations, strategy, which really helped me as when I started thinking about moving out of Wipro BPO to more of a sort of research and business based environment. That really helped me sort of crack the interview at Gersel Learning Group.
So great, Pramil. So one thing people go for, when they are looking out for MBA, executive MBA or a full-time MBA.
Yeah.
So basically, they majorly are going to do that for the connections and the networking that they will have,
Yeah.
the kind of broaden horizon that they will be getting into.
Yeah.
So what's your perspective about that, and are you connected with your friends from that time right now or not?
No, absolutely, and I totally agree with you. I think one of the core values of, or rather the value proposition of an MBA is not just sort of the post-MBA campus placement and the learning, but also the network that it builds for you. And for me also, I think it was a great opportunity to interact with a lot of people who were doing the same program. And as we used to have classes at specific institutes which were sort of enrolled by IIM Calcutta within Delhi. There were a lot of other people who also used to come and attend the classes. So it gave me a lot of exposure, and especially, I mean, there were a lot of people who were working outside of the BPO industry. So it gave me a lot of exposure as I started talking to them, understanding about like what are some of the other kind of opportunities which are out there, what are people working on, how people are sort of growing in their organizations. Plus, at the same time, because a lot of people were in, like, not everyone was from BPO. In fact, very less people from BPO industry. It sort of did a lot of enrichment, like professional enrichment for me also, because I was interacting with people outside of my industry. So that gave me a lot of exposure about like how other industries work, what kind of roles are there, what do people do, how are they thinking about leveraging their MBA, and the learnings from it within their own roles in the company, which also gave me a lot of confidence and also a lot of insights. And so initially, I think IIM Calcutta did not give an alumni status to people who are doing this program. Not sure if they still done it, but most of the people who were part of my program, and then for later also, they created a LinkedIn group, which it still exists, and people are connected through it. So at least there is a small community which exists. People sort of are part of it, which helps.
Okay, Pramil. So the next question, it's related to your shift that you had made after the Wipro. So basically, a lot of viewers who would be viewing this podcast and a lot of our users, they, want to know just if they are switching, from one organization to other, how to identify the skill sets, needed to make that switch, and where to look for them, basically if I'm working in an organization and I'm looking that now it's a time for switch, or how would I even find that time? Okay, it's a correct, period for me.
So no, that's a great question, and I'll probably break this down into two parts as I sort of heard this from you. I think number one is the question around like what is the right time for people to switch, right? When should you think about switching? from an organization. So I think I can offer like 2 or 3 perspectives. Number one is, in general, early in our career, we sometimes don't very clearly know where we are going or where we want to go, right? A lot of the initial career decisions are generally motivated by compensation, right? We start working, and then in 1 or 2 years, if we get another opportunity which is paying us 20, 30, 40% more, we'll probably take the jump, and then we'll continue doing that. And once we get to about 8 to 10 years of experience, that's when we start thinking about, okay, what is it that I really want to do? What do I enjoy? What kind of people I want to work with? What kind of work environment keeps me motivated, and those kind of things. However, if we start thinking about it early, then it actually gives us more runway to start doing what we enjoy, start doing it with people we enjoy working with, and also sort of continue to focus on the kind of skill set that we want to build, and we can start doing that early, right? So I think one thing is to very clearly think as much as we can, which is sometimes difficult in the day-to-day work for us, but as much as possible, it's really identifying what do we really enjoy doing, which is sort of, if even if you reflect on what you are doing currently, or where you are working currently, you should be able to identify, okay, out of the 10 things that I have done in the past week or month in my current organization, there were these 2 3 moments where I really felt like, which made me happy, and it made me happy, not because of like what I was doing or the recognition part of it, but because I was just enjoying the task and what I was doing, right? And the more you'll do that thinking, even if you do this once a month, in a year you will have 12 sort of reflections and 12 data points, which will very clearly tell you what you should focus on, right? That's number one. Number two, I think, is reflecting on where you are working, and every industry and every company generally is at a stage in terms of their growth maturity, right? Let's say if we take example of the educational technology industry, right? The industry has seen a lot of very fast growth in the past few years, especially after COVID, right? And then within the educational technology industry, there are some companies which have grown faster than the overall industry rate. Now, if you are in that industry, then you will sort of continue to keep that push, right? And that's something that we call as tailwinds, right? That it is basically like when you are on a cycle, if there is wind behind you, then you'll need to put in less effort, but you'll still move forward faster, right? So that, I think, is also important to understand, that a lot of the growth that you are seeing is that coming from the growth of the company or the growth of the industry. And once you start realizing that that growth is slowing, either for the industry or for the company, then what do you want to do, right? Because every industry, every company goes through a maturity cycle. So once they mature, then they'll probably not keep growing at the same rate at which they were growing when they were small.
There is a saturation.
Exactly. So it's important to identify if the company that you are working for or the industry you are working for is getting to that saturation, and that sort of helps you define whether you want to make the switch. I think the third point is around the fact that whether some of the other factors are important for you, right? For example, if you're working in an organization where you are not getting promoted for XYZ reason, right? Or your compensation is not increasing, right? Or the work environment is something which you feel does not work for you because it does not align with your values. So that also is another consideration which you should sort of think about, whether you want to make the switch or not. Because ultimately the goal of making the switch is for you to be at a better place from multiple angles, right? It could be financial, it could be your sort of physical, mental health, it could also be relationships. So that, I think, is part one probably of your question, which is that when should you think about the switch. Then I think the second question you had was about how should you identify the skills, right? So there could be two situations, right, when you want to make a switch. Situation number one could be that you're making the switch in the same industry. If you're making the switch in the same industry, then it's probably not a lot of change for you, because you are then taking what you already learned and you will go and apply it to another company. In my example, I was moving from BPO to a core sort of research based firm, and it required a complete sort of shift in skill set for me. So what worked for me was somehow, I think, that investment I made in my 1 year MBA, and because I did that well, and I was also sort of generally um, I like reading about business and those kind of things. So while I was at VPO, I was already doing that. Somehow it helped me develop a perspective that when I started giving my interviews for Gersalman Group, I could assure them that I understand what needs to be done and I will be able to do a good job. That being said, I still remember when applied for the role. I did not just stop at applying for the role at Gersalman Group. I think I applied for it through so it was not like someone reached out to me. I actually applied on my own for that role through Naukri. And it had sort of the contact detail of the recruiter listed there. So after I applied, I sent the recruiter an email with my CV, and I told her about sort of my experience and my IIM MBA and some of those kind of things. The recruiter sent my profile, and the first response from Gersalman Group was a no. Okay. Because it was for the obvious reason that it's a research firm and this person is coming from a BPO. We don't think there will be a skill set match. Okay. The recruiter came back and told me, and I pushed the recruiter again. I told her that, see, these are some of the things that I have done. I have also sort of continued to enhance my skill set. I am doing this 1 year MBA program from IIM, which has improved my skill set around business. And can you at least ask them to interview me? I think the IIM sort of brand helped probably. So somehow that investment of time and money was ultimately justified, and the Gersalman Group leadership team sort of agreed to at least interview me. When I got the opportunity to interview with them, I think I had 3 local rounds of interview. One was with one of the senior managers who was going to be my immediate supervisor. The other one was with, again, I think one of the senior managers in the HR team. And then final round was with one of the vice president who was the office head for Gersalman Group, Gurgaon. I think all my interviews probably happened on the same day. And as I kept moving through the interviews, I think my confidence continued to improve. And then there was one final round of interview, which was which was with one of the senior VPs based in US, who was the head of the program. So that happened sort of just over a telephone call, which was more of a 10-15 minute get to know you kind of a conversation. I think the key, again, as I reflect back on it, as people are thinking about making a switch in scenario 2, where it's a different skill set, is one, very clearly identifying what are some of the skill sets that you bring to the table which would be relevant for the new role. So in my case, it was sort of 2 things. Number one was I talked about my IIM MBA, which gave me insight into the business process. The other sort of overlap I talked about was the fact that the role at GLG was also going to be sort of managing a small team of 8 to 10 people. So while it was research, but it was still research operations. And I was able to sort of frame my narrative around the fact that I am also, in my current role at Wipro, I am also managing a team of 40-50 people. So somehow sort of I should be able to take my experience of people operations and apply it into the new role at GLG. So it's more a question of sort of really thinking hard and identifying what do you bring to the table, right? I mean, that is somehow the most obvious question. which becomes even more relevant when you are moving to a role which is sort of different from your experience. So it's really important to think very hard about that, right? Just 2 or 3 things which are really compelling, which help people understand what you bring to the table.
So that's great. We have a lot of users who are from basically who are into non-tech backgrounds and they want to get into tech.
Yeah.
So we get a lot of queries from users that I am from. These days this is a thing now that people from since my brother was he has done BCom.
Yeah.
And then he has done MBA and he is currently working in Havels right now.
Yeah.
So he told me that I just want to learn coding one day,
Yeah.
and that out of curiosity that everybody is learning it, I should be also learning it.
Yeah.
So I told him that different ways that he can do that, and so so this is just a hobby for him. Now
Yeah.
for the people who are looking to switch their careers into the tech,
Yeah.
so of course it would be harder for them because they
Yeah.
had to learn new things from initial stage than to apply that. But I think that getting experience in the organization and just to know how an organization works,
Yeah.
basically it helps to
Yeah.
to place that if I'm learning this thing, it will
Yeah.
be implemented in this place,
Yeah.
and then this would be the result out of it.
Yeah.
So I think that helps, and of course if you are an organization, there is also a networking kind of a thing.
Yeah.
That you will be connected with other people.
Yeah.
And since also working in a BPO, it's a totally different skill sets. Working in a BPO, you work a lot. In BPO there is a lot of work, and the team, the kind of problems that BPO faces is very unique to them. Escalations and everything, the client and everything. So you learn a lot from a BPO, and definitely if you can project that in the right direction and talk with the person like you were interviewing at GLG. So I think you must have used experience from that sort of stage of your career, and projected as I will handle it like this if there is sort of situation arises. So definitely it's kind of culmination of what you are doing and where you want to go, and the bridge between that is the skill sets that are that you need to learn. So Pramil, so you moved to the GLG, you shifted professionally and into a totally different environment.
Yeah.
So while you made the change for a professional growth, how were the things at your personal level? What were you doing at that time?
I started at GLG in April 2018. April 2008. And I had it by that time. I think I completed 5 years at Wipro BPO. I was getting married that year later in November 2018 to my wife. Now we just completed 15 years of togetherness. So I think on a personal level, while sort of the shift to GLG was something I wanted more from a learning and business and moving into sort of more sort of closer to business and research. But then also personally, I think one of the very big reason was also to move out of the BPO industry, primarily for sort of, I didn't want to be in a sort of shift-based environment. I think the research and consulting firms, while they are also demanding, and they are sort of they require you to constantly upskill yourself and improve yourself intellectually, but they do offer sort of a certain predictability and balance also, right? So while I was at DLG, I started having more normal sort of work days of like, at least I could sort of work during the day. I continued to work hard at GLG also. So while the official timing was 9:30 to 6:30, I used to get in by 9:30, and I always used to sort of try to work till 8:30, and especially also because I think I always felt coming from BPO that I had this imposter syndrome about being at GLG. That, I mean, do I really belong here?
That's a lot of people that they go through this.
Exactly.
Whenever they are making career shift, or even if if someone is getting into a new job directly from the college, and they see everybody else they are doing their job with efficiency and everything, they're throwing jargons at you, and you are like, am I at a wrong place?
Yeah, exactly. So I just wanted to prove myself, and plus I just felt like I because I had got this opportunity. I wanted to make sure I did not lose it, at least from whatever was in control for me. Thankfully, my supervisor at GLG was an amazing leader. She also had like a banking experience, and after doing sort of frontline banking for a few years, she joined GLG in the financial services team, and she used to lead the other team as well. And she was a great mentor and coach for me. I think she did a lot of coaching for me on how to manage people in a more professional way, which was probably missing in that BPO environment because it was heavily focused on delivery. The people operations part was probably not as much prominent in BPO. So she coached me a lot on that. She coached me a lot about sort of the importance of doing quality work, the importance of sort of communication, taking initiative, and those kind of things. And because I was working hard, I think she was also willing to make that investment. And I think the other important message for which I want to give to sort of all the young audience that you have who are starting their career is just be open to feedback. If you understand that feedback is a gift, irrespective of where it is coming from, if you can sort of suppress your ego and see what is it that you can learn from a feedback that you're getting, especially from your supervisors and seniors and mentors and coaches, that can sort of significantly accelerate your career. So because I was good at taking feedback, also because I wanted to learn and improve, she was also willing to sort of give me feedback very candidly, tell me what was not working, what should I do differently, which helped me. So I stayed at GLG for 3 years, and again, I think those 3 years were incredibly enriching for me professionally. Got the opportunity to work directly with a lot of sort of senior stakeholders in the consulting research kind of environment, and during sort of my and then I think my supervisor sort of left as she moved cities, and then there was another person who was a leader within the local office at that time, started leading our team. So I started reporting to him and was another sort of fantastic, inspirational person, gave me a lot of autonomy on my work, provided a lot of coaching and mentoring, and then also sort of opened the doors for me for other opportunities. So as I left GLG in February 2013,
Okay.
2011, sorry. And as I was leaving GLG, I was already sort of exploring an opportunity, which was basically moving to their frontline team, which actually was a great recognition for sort of the hard work that I had done, because I started with a knowledge management role there, leading a research operations, compliance, and knowledge management team. But after sort of 2.5 years, and as I started picking up other projects which related to the frontline work which GLG used to do, the leadership at the local office actually sort of they thought that I could also do that job. So I was interviewing for that role. I spoke to sort of one of the leaders for that new team who was based in London, but then somehow the Bain opportunity came, and I took it, and I moved out of GLG.
Okay, so you were with GLG for almost 3 to 4
3
years.
years.
3 years, okay. And you joined in 2008, 2009. So during that period, the depression was going on, the world depression. So did you what was, you were there in the market, job market and everything, you were working. So how, looking at from your perspective, how the things were? Because, I was just around 13, 14 years, and I used to see on news that the market is going down, the market is going down. So how, from your perspective, how were the things?
Yeah. So I think I'll share both the professional and the personal perspective. And obviously the what was happening had a personal impact on a lot of people as well. Number one, I think GLG was an amazing organization. I think just for the context of the audience, Garsal and Men Group is an expert networking firm. What they do is they have over a period of time built a network of very senior leaders from different industries, and they onboard these people as their expert, right? Which potentially means that, let's say if today Rahul is an expert in edutech industry, Rahul can become a GLG council member, as that's what they are called. And the GLG's clients are generally premium sort of strategy consulting firms and investment banking firms. So when these consulting firms or investment banking firms are doing projects, they are they need to talk to people who are sort of experts in those industries to either get smart on those topics or understand sort of the workings of the industry. They will reach out to GLG and say that, hey, we are doing this project. Can we talk to 2 or 3 people in this industry? And then GLG will mine its database and they will identify, based on the request of the client, 2 or 3 people or maybe more, and they will share that list with client that here are some of the people who have experience in edutech industry. Let us know who would you like to talk to. So it could be one person, it could be multiple people. And then everyone, when they sort of become a council member to GLG, then they also offer an hourly rate. And they say that, let's say if I am ever invited for a 1 hour call with the client, here is what I'm going to charge in dollars, right? And which is generally sort of negotiated by GLG based on how much they are paying other council members, based on sort of similar experience and those kind of things. So because what happened in 2008 had an impact on the overall sort of market industries, it impacted investment banking and consulting industries. And then as a domino effect, it also impacted GLG and similar firms. So the business was starting to dry up. So it was a difficult time for the firm. However, at least as far as I know, in the India office, they did not lay off anyone. No one, at least in my knowledge, no one was asked to leave. They did not. We had our annual reviews and performance appraisals used to happen in December. We got our full bonuses. They did not cut down on anyone's bonus. I also remember, like, I got a decent hike, which I was not expecting, right? So from that perspective, I think I just feel like I was fortunate to be at GLG at that time, and GLG, like, it's a great company, very people-focused company. So I think they really sort of cared for the people at that time. Personally, I think I started to get a little worried because I was getting married in November that year, and all that happened around the same time. I also had sort of some investments in mutual funds which started tanking. Thankfully, I had sort of cover, and then I asked for some help from my parents for a short period of time. But thankfully, I mean, because I was probably not in some of the companies who were either sort of significantly impacted or were closing down the business or had a practice of laying off people, I was not sort of impacted severely, either sort of financially or otherwise. So I would just consider myself lucky to be at GLG at that point of time.
Okay, so the business was strong with GFG in the sense the sort of the structure that they have built.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think after GLG, you sort of shifted to Bain and Company.
Yeah.
And during that phase, we will go into Bain and Company. Before that, I just wanted to know, you were working with a non-profit organization.
Yeah.
Samasource.
Samasource.
Oh, Samasource. Okay, so Samasource. So what is that organization, and why did you join it basically?
Yeah.
Were you like detached with the world that I want to?
Not exactly detached with the world. I was somehow feeling that I mean, I was in a corporate role. I always wanted to sort of do something to give back to the society, and I felt that just making sort of monetary contributions time and again was not sort of making me satisfied, so to say. So I was trying to explore some sort of non-profit opportunities where I could contribute with some value-added work, which could also sort of make a contribution. So I came across Samasource. I think they were doing at that point of time they were doing sort of work in educating, not educating, but they were basically in the business of creating short-term work opportunities for underprivileged people. So they had a network, let's say in Africa and a lot of similar kind of countries, and their founder was, I think she was a Harvard MBA pass out. I think her name was Leela Jinnah or something. Unfortunately, she died very young to cancer a few years ago. But she started this, and I read about it somewhere. So I reached out to her directly, and the Samasource sort of I sent them an email and I asked them like I want to contribute. So they actually sort of just gave me a few tasks, and it was like a pure non-profit work. I think I did it for a few years maybe or something like that.
So, I was going through LinkedIn, and while talking to you initially, there was a sort of, pride in people that I've worked for this organization. And definitely, my dad was in army, and after he got the retirement, he sort of moved towards the non-profit organization and volunteering for different groups. So I'm, at a personal level, I'm also attached to that. So that's a great thing that you took some time out of your career and focused towards that thing so that it can benefit the greater good. Okay, so you moved towards the Bain and Company. Okay, so so tell me about it. Basically, how did you make that move? And you have spent around 9 to 10 years in Bain and Company, I assume. And how managed to stay in that role for so long? And apart from that, just tell us about small bits about what does exactly Bain and Company does.
Sure. I'll start with that question first. So Bain and Company is one of the top three premium strategy consulting firms. The other two are McKinsey and Boston Consulting Group. So these three are generally called as MBB. That's how they are referred to in the consulting space. Bain started in 1973. It was started by Mr. Bill Bain, who was actually at Boston Consulting Group, and he wanted to start a consulting firm which focused more on results. So Bill Bain started Bain and Company in Boston in 1973. So I think it's been more than 45 years or maybe 50 years. Actually, we completed 50 years last year. Has continued to grow, and I think we are at more than 55 offices globally. In India, we have multiple offices in Delhi. We have one office in Mumbai. We have one office in Bangalore. Almost like 20,000 employees globally. I think the beauty of Bain and Company is the culture. So Bain continues to be ranked number one, like number one consulting firm in sort of multiple forums. So Glassdoor, Vault magazine, which is a consulting focused magazine. So I think for year on year, for multiple years, Bain continues to be number one employer. And the whole reason behind that is like it's just a very special place when it comes to sort of taking care of its people. I think the environment and the culture is highly people focused. As sort of people started understanding, so for example, like the discussions around diversity, equity, inclusion, unconscious bias, and those kind of things, we have started hearing now at Bain. I think we have already been training our sort of leaders on these things for, I think, many years now. So I think when it comes to developing people, nurturing people, taking care of people, I think our processes, our sort of focus on these kind of things just continues to be very exemplary. So that I think is one of the reasons why I've continued to stay at Bain. And a lot of people who join Bain, I think, find it very hard. And even if people like, I run a global analytics COE at Bain, and because analytics is a hot skill, there are a lot of people from my team who go to other teams, and they generally sort of leave at fairly high compensation. And even after leaving, they will always say like, we miss the culture, right? So I think somewhere, I think Bain, despite the fact that it has grown so much in the past 50 years, somehow has always managed to keep the culture intact, which just continues to make it such an amazing place to work, um, from a sort of for any employee.
Okay, that's great. So I was reading about Bain and Company, and I totally relate to that. Basically, I read a lot of testimonials from employees and everything, that the place is very nice to be at, and a lot of things are provided. So how did you get into the got into the Bain and Company?
So Bain and Company, I think it happened by luck. I did not actively apply at Bain. I was, in fact, I think it was probably uh, November or December of 2010, and I was actually in my hometown in Gwalior on a short sort of just weekend trip to visit my families. So I am the only child, and my parents were based in Gwalior. So me and my wife were visiting my parents, and funnily, I was with my wife and another friend from Gwalior. I was at the Gwalior Fort when I got the call from a consultant. And she talked about Bain, and honestly, at that time, I did not know what Bain was. I mean, I knew that GLG works with consulting firms and investment banking firms, but my role at GLG was not sort of related to front end. So I did not have a lot of exposure to like who these companies are. So I did not know about Bain. The consultant called and said that, I mean, there is an opportunity at Bain and Company. It's a consulting firm, and it's related to sort of the knowledge management team. And it was actually going to be an individual contributor role. And I was already sort of a manager at GLG at that time. But I said, I mean, no harm in discussing. So after I came back, she took my CV and then she scheduled an interview, which I think happened probably in December, only after I came back from Gwalior. And the office was actually very close to where I used to work at GLG, within that cyber city area. And I went there, and I remember the meeting room had probably about 15-20 people. So they were doing like a mass hiring day for for the knowledge management team, which was growing. So I was invited for the senior specialist role, and then there was also hiring which was happening for the 2 level below associate level. And I found like one of my colleagues from GLG from another team there as well. So we looked at each other and we smiled at each other, and sort of unconsciously agreed that no one is going to go back to GLG and talk about where we went and who we saw. But on that day, I think I had 1, 2, 3 round of interviews. I had an imposter syndrome. So just to tell you a story, I mean, when I was there was another person who's probably working at EY in a more sort of front end kind of a role, had come for the interview, very sort of immaculately dressed, wearing a blazer and everything, was carrying the laptop, the work laptop, and was also sort of working on the side. At GLG, I did not have a laptop. I had a desk computer. So I had taken a leave, and I was like, there's no way I am going to make it. Also because I realized by that time I had done research about Bain. So I sort of realized like it's a consulting firm and one of the top consulting firms. I felt like with these kind of people, I have no chance. But somehow I think at GLG, I had continued to sort of read more about business, learn more about business. I think Coursera had started by then. So I had signed up for a few sort of business foundation related courses or general industry related courses at Coursera. So I had developed a perspective. And because I was also sort of leading a knowledge management team at GLG, and the role was about knowledge management, I think after the first or the second round of interviews, I was able to sort of crack that. Although in the second round of interview, I met one of our sort of team managers who was from a different team. Later, I think he started leading our team as well. And he's been very famous for his sort of guesstimate questions. So sort of amazingly smart person, very good with numbers, very sharp. IIT FMS. And he sort of, I had first round of interview with the person who was leading the knowledge management team, which I think I cleared. So I went to the second round of interview. So this person gave me like a market sizing exercise, and I had never done a market sizing exercise in my life before, because obviously I did not go to a full-time 2-year MBA, or I had not sort of applied for any sort of research kind of a role.
So, can you just briefly explain what is market sizing?
So I think it's generally sort of a lot of guesstimate kind of questions which are given in interviews, specifically for research and consulting kind of a role, where it could be as simple as that, okay, if we are currently here in sector 136 Noida, and there is a barista across the road, can you estimate what will be the monthly sales of the store? So the key is that how are you going to think about that sort of as a problem? How will you identify what variables sort of make up the sales for the store? How are those variables impacted on a daily basis? And then how will you sort of build the equation to calculate the revenue, right? So he kept on giving me sort of clues, and he kept on asking, okay, tell me more, but there was no way I was able to solve it. And I was like, I mean, okay, that's it. But somehow, probably initially at that point of time, or for the knowledge management role, market sizing, success in the market sizing interview is probably not a big criteria. I probably met other criterias. So I was again shortlisted, and then I met our office head at that point of time for the sort of local office where I was supposed to work. And somehow that interview went well as well. She actually, I mean, I think at that time we were part of what we called as the Bain Capability Center office in India. We had about like 100 people. So she actually came out of her cabin. She sort of came to leave me up to the area where everyone was sitting, and then she showed me around the office, and she told me like, these are the number of people we have, and those kind of things, which gave me confidence that okay, at least I've cleared her round if she has come out to sort of accompany me till reception. And then I think I had 3 more round of interviews globally. So there were probably like 6 to 7 rounds I had for this role at Bain.
Okay, that's great. So, a thing, that I want to share with our user is that not every time when you are looking out for a job, you will get a job. Sometimes they will get to you and they will talk with you. And I don't think you were having a mindset to switch from GLG at that time.
Not exactly.
Yeah, so it can come to you. The opportunities can also come to you. Okay, now, so moving ahead, you have spent around 9 to 10 years in Bain Company right now. And so you have seen, from starting from Wipro till now Bain Company and spending a lot of time there.
Yeah.
So you have seen quite a lot of changes, in terms of the fresher workforce and sort of the future workforce. What kind of expectations you are having from future workforce and inclusion of everything, including work from homes, hybrid workforce, and kind of changes in technological aspects like into introduction of AI.
Yeah.
How do you think down the line 5 to 10 years, what kind of ideas that you are having that this is what we can expect from the Gen Z or the new people who are joining?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And again, I mean, it is my personal opinion, not something which is sort of a Bain and Company perspective. I feel like in the next 5 2 years, we are already seeing this, but in the next sort of 4 to 5 years, um, the expectations will probably continue to be the same, from like what managers and supervisors will continue to expect from the workforce. I think they'll continue to evolve in line with how uh, the business landscape and the technological sort of infrastructure and the society around us is evolving. But a few things which I think may happen. Number one, I think there will be a lot of focus around people's ability to upskill them quickly, because we are already starting to see the trend, which has started coming in. A lot of companies have started talking about it, which is the fact that now a lot of firms in India are just looking beyond the Ivy League schools to hire talent. Right now, obviously, I think having a good brand on your CV always helps, especially for specific roles like consulting, where when a firm charges client a premium, the client also asks that, okay, who is going to be on the team? So you need sort of that premiumness of your team to justify that premium in the fee that you're charging the client. But then at the same time, I think a lot of firms will sort of start looking at talent beyond the premium things. So what will and the technological landscape with AI coming in, and those kind of things, I think the quick upskilling and for people to learn skills quickly will become very important, right, in the future. So people who will succeed will be the people who can learn new skills quickly, right? We are already seeing this, like since ChatGPT has launched, in custom GPTs, AI, and those kind of things have come in. People who have learned these skills quickly have become much more productive and are delivering much more value in their roles and in their organizations than people who are probably not still as proficient in that. I think that's going to be number one. Number two is going to be the fact that collaboration and ability to work in teams will become more and more important, because in India, and I'm talking about the environment in India, like I think by 2030 we'll probably have about 24 to 2500 global capability centers in India. Currently, we are at about 1600. We'll probably get to around sort of, or maybe even earlier. What is global capability? So a lot of firms from US, Europe are shifting their bases in India to sort of take out a lot of operations from high cost places and setting it up in India, right? And as I was talking about sort of the BPO revolution, I mean, that was before that, I think there were IT services, but then not a lot of other operational processes, right? BPO was like I was in technical support. But now I think over these 15-20 years, we have also sort of established our credibility in the country, that we are able to sort of not just do technical support kind of work or IT work, but we can also sort of do complex manufacturing, and also complex sort of knowledge-based tasks. And a lot of that shift is now happening, and which is why a lot of US-based and Europe-based companies are now shifting their centers to India. And that will help our people because it creates that opportunity. But then it also requires people to be able to work in teams and collaborate better, because it requires sort of working in projects and those kind of things. Number three, I feel, is the ability to work in a cross-cultural environment. That I think is another shift I am seeing. And also, maybe 20 years ago, it was sort of even a dream for someone in India to be leading a team in US, right? But that's a shift that we are seeing now. Like at least I am aware of companies like Bain, which have a meritocratic environment, which do not believe in where you are sitting, but believe in whether you have the skill set or not. There are people in India who now lead teams of people who are based in Europe and US, right? And to be able to do that successfully, you need to have that cross-cultural understanding of sort of how people work across different countries and different cultures, right? So that I think is going to become really important. Number 4, I think, is going to be creativity. And when I say creativity, it's not like being able to create a painting, right? It's basically your ability to sort of think innovatively about what you are doing about a problem, and develop a solution around it. Because as things become easier, lives become easier, being able to work becomes easier, uh, we will also continue to see new and newer problems, new challenges, right? So we should be able to solve these challenges innovatively and creatively. So in my view, I think these are the 3-4 things which people who are entering the workforce today and people who will enter the workforce in 4 to 5 years now should really focus on.
Okay. That's great. Thanks for the insights. And with us at Geeks for Geeks also are, we have, as a user base, our talent pool is around of 21 to 21 million users currently registered on our platform, and almost 45% of them are freshers and are in the college right now, first to fourth year, and looking out for the opportunity. So this will really help them. So they should be problem solvers, creative. They should have a creative attitude, and they should quickly upskill themselves. The recent technical shifts that are happening, the new skill sets that are being demanded from them. So they should learn a lot, and always have that attitude that if a change is required, then you should adapt according to that. Cross-cultural, sort of having that attitude with you would also help. So there are 4 or 5 things, as Pramil has told us. So you should focus on that if you are preparing for the jobs in upcoming years. And apart from that, Pramil, these 20 years for you have been a long, this is a long period. And starting out, as you told, you got married in 2008, 2009. And you started working in 2003, 2004.
Yeah.
So, all this professional work and everything, how do you manage your, sort of work and professional life? Because it's a really sort of burning topic right now to manage work-life balance and everything. And that comes in between, because when you are at a position that you are currently the director of Bain Company, so it becomes a really essential part of your life to manage both things, with responsibility and credibility and accountability. So how do you do that?
Happy to talk about that. I think the caveat that I will share is that, again, as I said, Bain is a very different firm. It does not believe in sort of that command and control method of managing people. And my role gives me the flexibility to sort of design my day. So I want to sort of, I'll talk about how I do it, but then I also want to sort of clarify that because I am at Bain and I may be in a different situation from someone who works probably in a firm where they have to be there from 9 to 9 or 9 to 6 or whatever that is. But in general, I think as you grow in your career, your portfolio grows. And what that means is that you start getting more and more fragmented, right? Which is that when, let's say, you start your career in let's say in an IT company, you are doing coding, you are on a project. As you grow from one project, you start handling 2 projects, 3 projects, right? Then as you further grow, you start handling multiple projects, but then you are also responsible for 2 or 3 developers or 2 or 3 other people who are coding for you. Then that span continues to grow. The projects may also increase, or they may become more complex, and then the number of people that you have to manage also sort of increases, and which also means that you are not only sort of talking to many people who are part of your team, but then you are also talking to multiple different stakeholders, right? So that continues to sort of expand, and it creates a lot of fragmentation for you. So the key thing is that a lot of times that is where I think people start feeling little burnt out, right? Which starts happening not because you're working for 12, 14 hours. That may be the case as well. Obviously, I mean, if you're doing it consistently, but then when you have so much fragmentation in the day, even if you're working for 10-12 hours a day, you can actually feel sort of much more drained than you would be if you would not have so much fragmentation.
Okay.
Right. So I think a few things that I try and do is, number one, I think my role offers me the flexibility to manage my day. Right.
Okay.
So the success in my role is defined more by the outcomes and the results.
Okay.
Right. And not sort of the number of hours. Obviously, I mean, I have to put in the number of hours which is expected. But then at the same time, the greater focus is on outcomes, right? Which gives me the flexibility that, let's say, if on a given day, if there is something that I need to take care of with my family in the evening, I can ask my stakeholders to shift the call, right?
Okay.
Or do it later, do it earlier. Let's say on a specific day, if there is something that I need to manage at home in the evening, I can also start my day early. Let's say I can, instead of starting at 9:30 or 10, I can start at 8 and I can try to wrap up early as well. I can inform my team. So a few things or tips which I'll tell people across all levels. I think number one is always do some planning. One of the major sort of gaps that I also hear from a lot of junior team members is that they are actually not really thinking about, okay, here is what I am supposed to be working on for the upcoming week.
Okay.
And let's just focus on week. Let's not talk about month and quarter and year. They are more like at that level and that time frame. It's more about thinking about goals, not about specific tasks, right? So think about, on a Sunday or on Monday, think about like what are some of the things that you are going to focus on in the week. Try to keep it as much sort of sacrosanct and intact as possible.
Okay.
By aligning weekly with your supervisor that here is what I am going to focus on. Is there anything that you want to add or remove? That will ensure that if something gets added by your supervisor or any other stakeholder, you can actually tell them that, hey, I am already working on these things. Is there anything that you want me to stop working on or deprioritize so that I can pick this up?
Okay.
Because obviously I can't sort of work on everything at the same time. That I think is number one. Number two is very consciously taking a call that when you are thinking about projects, initiatives, or any extracurriculars within your organization that you want to work on, what do you want to say yes to and what do you want to say no to?
Okay, set clear boundaries.
Exactly. Because a lot of times just saying yes to everything will get you into a situation wherein suddenly you will realize that there is so much to do and you don't have enough time for it. Right? So in general, I think, and this, I'm just quoting this from one of the books that I've read. It's called Great at Work. That prioritization and focusing is really important. And the key is to sort of do less and then obsessing about it. Okay. Right? So which basically says that identify the top 2, 3, 4 things that you can really do a great job on in the time that is available to you and say no to everything else. But once you have identified those 3, 4 things, then go all out on those, right? Do a really great job on those. So that sort of helps you in sort of keeping your energy, doesn't make you sort of drained out. And then finally, number 3, I feel like all of us in general outside of work have some interest. Keep your interest alive. If you don't have, then cultivate something, right? A lot of times, and again, this is not, people should not take it otherwise. But a lot of times when I interview junior team members, I ask them, what is your hobby? And they say watching Netflix. Now, watching Netflix is not a hobby. You are just consuming content, right? A hobby is something where your mind is productively engaged and it is creating something, right? And it is also sort of stimulating your own mind. Watching content, unless you are writing a summary of it or a note of it or doing something, is not really a hobby, right? So let's just agree that watching Netflix or any OTT for that matter is entertainment. Yeah. Let's not call it a hobby, right? So my third guidance is cultivate a hobby.
Learn a skill.
Exactly. Because when you have a hobby that you can pursue actively on your sort of time off or weekends, it actually energizes you, right? And when it energizes you, then you have the energy to push through things that you have to work on.
That's a great advice. So basically, I was thinking to follow that. And for our audiences also, as Pramil has told us that you need to first set clear boundaries. What exactly your work and what exactly is not your work. And apart from that, cultivate a skill, cultivate hobbies, cultivate skills, because that is going to help you. If you are into entertainment, if you are looking to, if you are thinking that Netflix is your thing, if you think that is a hobby, that is not a hobby. Basically, it's just for the entertainment purpose. Learn something new. It will help you. And if you are at initial, state of your career, and if you are working and you want to spend some time, learn something creative. Just invest your time in that, and eventually it will come out good to you. And after that, Pramil, a lot of young audiences would be watching. As you know, as the director of Bain Company, and apart from that, having multiple experiences with you, what do you look for a guy or a girl if that person is joining a company and they are freshers or relatively new to the business? What do you exactly look when you hire that?
I think 2-3 things at high level. Number one is coachability. So as I mentioned, like one of the key skills we should develop professionally is to be able to take feedback well. And when I am interviewing people, that sort of skill set is something, or rather that quality is something which I am looking at, right? Which is that, are you someone who would be able to take feedback? Because when you start a new role, when you join a new organization, there will be a lot to learn. You're not going to be perfect. But if you come with a mindset that I am perfect and I don't need to improve anything, then that just becomes tricky, right? It's also sort of that concept around the fixed mindset and the growth mindset, right? That people may have sort of read or heard about. So in general, I mean, we at Bain, we have always called that coachability. But now I think because there is literature out there, I'll say like I'll look for people with a fixed mind, with a growth mindset, people who are sort of open to feedback, people who are sort of willing to learn new skills, and they are investing in sort of that skill set. That's number one. Number two, I think after coachability is obviously the desire to learn. And are you someone who is constantly trying to learn so that they can add more value versus someone who has a fixed mindset that I already sort of know what is there to learn. That's number two. Number three is very important at Bain, and I'm sure it's also very critical in any sort of project-based environment, is the ability to work in a team in a collaborative manner, right? I would rather have a decent sort of team player in my team than sort of an extraordinarily smart person who can't work in a team.
Okay. Okay. So basically, you would be looking for a person who is a team player and contributes to the team, gives ideas, initiatives, and also has sympathy or empathy for the other team members. Okay. So these are, for the Gen Z audience that we have. So these are all the terms that they listen to, team collaboration, working in an environment, not an individual player. So these are actual, the skill sets that people are looking for right now if you go for a job opportunity. So these are not just some buzzwords. So yeah, कुछ pointer है? ठीक है? Okay. Okay, so Pramil, starting from your initial stage, in GLG and then in Bain Company, you have had multiple opportunities to lead team and be a leader. So what do you think is important for a leader and for the future leaders who are looking out for growth and for the new opportunities? So what do you think what are the things they should focus upon?
Yeah, I think the most important thing to understand for anyone who wants to lead a team today and in future is the fact that you cannot lead a team with command and control today. I think that we are way past that time. If you want to be a successful leader today, then it has to be focused around respect and trust, right? Which potentially means that when you have people in your team, are you sort of treating them as an individual? Are you treating them respectfully? Do you value their opinions? Do you provide them the autonomy to work sort of by being able to sort of voice their opinions, give their ideas, and not micromanaging them? Are you there for them as a mentor and a coach versus sort of always questioning their modus operandi and those kind of things? So I think this is something which is going to become more and more important for people to become successful leaders, right? And part of that is also driven by how our society is changing. See, 20 years ago or more than 20 years ago, as we sort of think about that Maslow's hierarchy, like when I started work, the only thing that was important for me was to get a job and become sort of financially stable, because that would have defined my life in future, right? But I mean, as my son will enter the workforce, I have probably solved for some of those problems already for him. So for him now, purpose, what he's doing, who is he working with, the environment and the culture, those things start becoming more important, right? So it's really important for leaders to understand that if they are not changing the way they manage and lead teams, it's going to be very difficult for them to sort of scale the team successfully and also build an inclusive culture where people feel sort of comfortable, people feel energized, people feel sort of motivated to be part of that team and to be able to sort of do a great job.
That's great. So if you are an aspiring leader or looking to start up your organization or get into a organization at a senior level, so what just Pramil has told you and me, you should focus on that and learn to be empathetic and respect your team members. So Pramil, taking inspiration from your experiences, talking about the long-term vision and short-term goals. So how do you balance them? Looking at your professional journey, how do you balance your long-term vision, for a longer period of duration and for a short-term immediate goals? How do you look at them?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I think, see, in general, I try to do it, and all of us should sort of strive to do that, which is basically that our short-term goals should be an enabler to our long-term vision and thinking, right? And that is sort of that's ideally how it should work. But unfortunately, it doesn't always work that ways. I mean, we have a vision for something and we want to do things in a certain manner, but it doesn't always sort of work out in that ways. And we encounter challenges. I think my approach has always been to sort of make sure that I am constantly aligned on what my long-term vision is. I don't forget it, and that becomes sort of the guiding light for me to sort of think about what my short-term goals should be, right? So let's say if my goal is to become a leader which can manage large teams, in terms of sort of spans, in terms of the complexity of the projects, then the short-term goal should be to sort of keep doing things which help me sort of build that experience, right? So I think in a way, the more we clearly can articulate what our long-term vision is, the easier it becomes to then sort of break them down into short-term goals. And then the short-term goals keep becoming your sort of staircase, so to say, for your sort of long-term vision in that sense.
Okay, that's great. And so, Pramil, a lot of people that are connected with us and our users and candidates, who are with us. So basically, in today's, sort of times, talking about failures and rejections, they face a lot of rejections from being, applying for a job, starting a business, and everything, looking from that perspective. So how would you, if you can give some advices on how to deal with failures and rejections, be it as a job interview, be it organization that you are working in, things didn't go, how you thought it to be, how one deals with it.
Yeah. No, again, that's a great question, and I think rejections are something all of us go through, right? Whether it's relationships, whether it is career, whether it's someone starting a new firm or doing a startup, and going out for investment. I think rejections are generally sort of a part of life, and at times I think it does sort of make a dent into our confidence. The key thing is to always sort of staying resilient and also sort of looking at things from a growth mindset perspective, right? And what happens is that when you have a growth mindset, you take rejections and setbacks as sort of one, opportunities to learn and improve, and number two is you only take them as a temporary setback and not like a reflection on your own skill set. And I think my sort of guidance to all your young sort of or sort of audience across all age groups and experiences will be to one, not sort of take rejections uh, as a projection of your own skill set and capabilities, because that sometimes becomes easy. If we get rejected, we may feel like, am I worth it, should I really be doing this, and those kind of things. I think really assess and do some reflection coming out of that situation, not trying to do it within that situation, because if you do that assessment being in that situation, then you will always feel that you have failed because you don't have that skill set or whatever that situation is or whatever is required, right? So I think that is number one. Number two is always take learnings out of the rejection. I mean, I'm sure people would have read a lot of stories about startup founders sort of applying to hundreds and hundreds of VCs before they got their first funding, right? But then I'm sure people who were eventually able to get funding were people who once stayed resilient, and they did not give up after sort of that 99th or 199th rejection. They continued and they kept on going. And number two was, I'm sure if they were rejected 200 times, at least 20 people would have probably told them what did not work, right? And then the feedback, if you sort of take feedback from those 20 people and you really apply that, right, and continue to improve your product, then eventually success will come, right? So I think it's just keeping these two things in mind. One, do not relate it to your own self-esteem. Don't take rejection as a reflection of your sort of capabilities, personalities, and those kind of things. Keep it separate. Just keep it as a situation which happened. It's like you are walking on the road and sort of there is a stone and you stumble. You don't sort of like all motivational sort of quotes will tell you that you get up and you keep walking again, right? So keep doing that. And number two is reflect and take feedback that next time what will you do differently, right? So I think I'll leave the audience with these two guidances.
Okay, that's great. So, guys, so this is the last phase of the podcast in which Pramil will share some insights and some motivational things for you that you can work upon and learn from them. And if you want to connect with Pramil, his LinkedIn, uh, you sort of ID would be mentioned in the description of this video. You can connect with him directly and ask if you have any doubts. And don't just go and send a lot of messages to him, and just wait for his reward. Yes, Pramil. So, is there any sort of remarks
Yeah.
that you will be sharing with our users today?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think I'd just like to leave the audience with a very sort of high level thought, which is one, it's at a macro level, and one is at sort of an individual level. I think starting with the individual level, I just feel like I come from a very normal educational background. I did not go to an Ivy League educational institution. I feel I should have tried harder in my education. But then at the same time, as I reflect back on it, I mean, that's the opportunity which I was not able to sort of take up at that time. But then I really feel like um, over a period of sort of so many years with hard work, taking feedback, taking initiative, I've been able to grow in my career. So I think one sort of advice for all the audience, and especially people who are starting their career, is the fact that don't worry about what has happened in the past. Your past, your family background, where you come from, which city you come from, what is your educational qualification, that is not going to define who you will be in future. What will define who you will be in future is sort of what are you going to do differently from today, and the hard work and the efforts that you are going to put in for sort of in the years to come, right? That I think is one message at an individual level. The second message is more at a macro level. As I reflect back on my journey, I feel um, I've been sort of lucky in many situations, being at the right place at the right time. But at the same time, as I reflect back on it, I also see like a great India story. Like I come from Gwalior, which is a tier 2, tier 3 city, and I know that a lot of people I know have come from sort of similar kind of sort of tier 2, tier 3 towns, moving to metros and working here, and they're sort of doing well in their career. And this is just sort of a testament to the growth our country is seeing, and it is only sort of getting started, right? As I was talking about earlier, that initially I think we were doing IT sort of services export. We were doing the back office sort of basic back office services export. But now I think we are not only doing complex knowledge tasks. We will be doing complex manufacturing, right? I mean, we have already started sort of manufacturing for sort of Apple, iPhones, semiconductor manufacturing plants are being set up in India. So I think there is a lot of opportunity in India which exists now, and which will continue to accelerate in future, right? So that I think is something which just I really feel like it's a great time for people to be in India and explore and take advantage of this opportunity, especially in the services sector. And one bonus tip for me, which I want to share with users, especially who are young, is to sort of continue to invest in your family and relationships. Um, I realized it maybe after sort of 8 to 10 years of working, but I don't sort of forget that lesson, and that's what I want to tell everyone, that value your parents. If you get married, value your spouse. Take out time for your family. Take out time for your sort of kids, because ultimately, um, when it's time for you to go, it is not going to be the CEOs or probably the VPs of the companies that you worked for 20 years ago. It's going to be your family, which is going to be your side, right? So never forget that part, and always sort of keep that in mind.
Okay, great. So, Pramil, just another thing. If you can go back in time, in 2003, 2004, when you're starting out, what two things you would tell yourself?
The two things I'll tell myself, number one, I think will be to continue to explore more. I feel like initially when I started in 2003, I started with BPO because I felt that because of my background and my education, that's the best I can do, right? So one thing which I'll tell myself if I could go back is that having the confidence to sort of go out and reach out to companies and people for work which I could do, and not just feel that because I don't have the a premium education, then those opportunities or I only have limited set of opportunities. That I think is one, and then I think number two will be continuing to invest in my learning and education. I think I started it with a specific reason in 2007 and 8 when I registered for the IIM program. But ideally, I think I should have started earlier.
Okay, that's great. That's a great advice. So guys, you have heard what just Pramil said. All the things that you should be focusing upon, and if you're starting your journey, or if you're a professional and are looking to shift your career towards a different industry, or even if in the same industry. So there are some really nice tidbits of the information in this podcast. You can listen to it again and take a note of everything that Pramil has said. And again, we are Geeks for Geeks, and we are always looking to bring some guests who can add value to your life and your professional journey. So today with us was Pramil, and thanks Pramil for coming on this day and sharing your thoughts with all of your audience. And I know was tough for you to travel that far, and definitely, but then again, on a better perspective, it's going to help our people.
No, absolutely, and thank you so much for inviting me. And it was great to be on this podcast and share some of my experience and lessons with your audience.
Thank you. So, guys, stay tuned for the next episode, and we'll be back again with some really amazing guests. So, till then, you can check out the description and send messages to Pramil. And if you have any doubts, you can ask him.